Hello, and welcome to the Sacred Awareness Podcast. I'm your host, Angela Dawn. I'm a quantum healer, transformation coach, mystic, and channel of cosmic consciousness. Allow me to be your guide as we explore topics of metaphysics, consciousness, and, well, just being a human during these expansive times for humanity. There's much to discover. Let's get exploring. Okay, did you realize that each and every one of us has a relationship with that force that we call change? Let's talk about this for a bit today. When somebody even brings up change, the topic of change, how does that make you feel? What does it mean to you? Is change something you enjoy? Is it something you detest? Do you run towards it? Do you run away from it? What is it? What do you do when you're faced even with the idea of change? How comfortable are you with change? Is it something that you've made the decision you thrive upon? Well, if it's not, what if you made the decision today that it was? How might that actually shift things for you going forward? Is change something you avoid like the plague, doing everything humanly possible that you can to just stay put in those ways of yours? Now, I'm going to ask you, how well are those ways working for you right now? They may be working perfectly, smoothly. They may not be. You need to look, though. You're asking maybe why this matters. What does comfort actually have to do with change? Well, what if I said nothing and everything simultaneously? Let me explain. We are only ever doing one of two things. We are either moving away from pain or moving towards pleasure. That's it. You're only moving away from pain or moving towards pleasure. I'm going to give you an example of this, real life example. Have you found yourself in the midst of an addiction, or at the very least, witness somebody in the midst of just a full blown addiction? Okay. Have you ever noticed how it seems obvious that the addiction is harmful to everybody, to the addict, even? But that doesn't actually make it any easier to stop. We know what behavior is harmful, we know what behavior is helpful, but that does not always mean it's easy to make the right choices. Hear me out. You know how poisonous refined sugar is, right? Yet in a Western diet, we can't stop ingesting those things. You can know it's bad, but not make it any easier to stop. So then we'll bring all sorts of things like love into the mix, saying to our addicts they loved their children or loved their spouse enough, they would quit. Now, if this is something that you've said, something you believe, something you feel, something you've thought, I'm going to humbly ask you, please stop gaslighting the addicts in your life. Do not shame them any further for not loving their children or their partner enough. What they need is your compassion. Now, I cannot speak for all addicts, but I've had my fair share of struggles with drugs. We need to remember something. The addiction is a symptom of something bigger than just not being able to stop drinking or stop using. Well, mine was a trauma response. I was raised to be afraid of my feelings, amongst other things, but that one had one of the bigger impacts. Phrases like turn off the tears, right? Made me do really ridiculous things to numb the feelings that, well, I was being shamed for feeling. So, parents, I'm going to ask you, please be mindful of the things that you say to your children. If their tears are making you feel uncomfortable, sorry, not sorry, that's a you problem. Yup, it's not their problem. We cannot expect children to learn how to self soothe before they're even biologically capable of doing so. We cannot expect to teach children to avoid their feelings solely because those feelings are making the other people around them uncomfortable. All they may be trying to do is just put their little nervous systems back in a state of regulation. But more on that another day. Where am I going with this? Well, with the example of the addict, that person won't actually quit until they begin to associate more pain with not changing than the pain they are afraid of facing if they do change. Okay? Does that make sense? I hope so. This is why, no matter how convincing or how compelling your arguments are, they don't matter. The only person, like, they don't matter in the big scheme of things. The only person that they matter to is you. The person in question most likely knows what they're doing is painful to not only them, but to everyone around them. But until they begin to associate it being more painful to stay the same than to change, that behavior won't stop. Can you see why it's imperative to operate within a certain level of compassion at all times? I'm just going to ask you, humble up. Why wouldn't you want to be the safe space for somebody to land on? Why wouldn't you want to be the loving ear that listens instead of judges? Why wouldn't you want to be the heart that accepts the journey of another, knowing that you don't have to understand to be supportive? Why not? Why do you need to understand the actions of another so deeply? Do you place your own behaviors, actions, and perceived mistakes under the same microscope as you place on the world around you? Just offering you a moment of self reflection here. Now, I'm not a gambling lady, not really in my belief system to win, but that's a whole other thing. But I'm going to bet that you've made a mistake or two along the way. Now, before you go and do that thing that us humans do when we go and judge another, saying, I didn't do something as bad as that, at least I didn't do that, just know that unless you are the great Mother Teresa herself, somewhere, someone is probably saying those things about you. Be mindful of those judgments, especially the ones you place on everyone around you. You may be receiving them back. We could move past this though, you know. So I'm going to ask you a question here. Do you like it when the world around you judges you? Do you like it when they are determined to misunderstand your actions? Does it make you pause and go, hey, yeah, whoa, wait a minute. I was wrong. Yeah, you are right. Thank you so much for pointing those things out to me. Thank you. Yeah, okay, probably not. So, why are we actually doing that to each other? Especially when we tend to generally do those things from the safe confines of our own glass houses. So, let's explore another side of the coin of change. Have you decided you're not good at it? Could it just be those ways showing their heads again? We say things along the lines of, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Hmm. To that, I'm just going to call bullshit. Are you just too lazy to try something new? Are you too afraid of what you might find? Just being too stubborn? What is it? There is something there that if you're trying to, if you figure you can't change, there's a belief there probably isn't serving you. I'm going to ask you to seek it out, revitalize it. What is it wanting you to know? I bet it's something. Now, another side. How often do you allow those around you to change? Now, I don't mean this in the way that we place the assumptions on what another needs to be working on in their own lives, as if we are the authority of where another is within their personal realm of expansion and growth. But to point out the shortcomings of another and then what? Patiently wait for a thank you? Okay, no, what I actually mean is when those around us change, what it does is it lights up areas in our own lives that are screaming for attention. And if you're not ready and you've made the decision that you're not ready to make your changes, well, it can be uncomfortable to watch another change. Then we unintentionally or intentionally, depending how you're choosing to operate, no shame either way. Just be aware of your creations and the way you're choosing to create them. We can actually sabotage those around us, almost gaslighting them by saying, I don't even recognize who you are anymore. To that, I'm going to say, no, you probably don't. You just recognize the old coping mechanisms, habits, outdated belief systems that were no longer serving. Would you like to get to know who I am without those things? Or do you require me to have those things to be in your life? That's just a question and a response you could use. So here's the thing. So that was just my dog moving around if you heard that. Not everybody in your life actually wants you to change. There will be ways that others have actually benefited from your previous way of being. There will be ways that you are, well, unintentionally reflecting things that they don't want to see. There will be ways that you're lighting up that which another would prefer to just leave in the dark. But can you make the changes in your life that need to be made, regardless of how much support the world is showing you in any given second of any given moment in time? You wish to be the change you want to see in the world? Well, now is the time to live in your own integrity and walk that talk, my friends. What are the words that you're currently weaving regarding change? Is there an infusion of your own personal vocabulary that is now required? Putting down phrases such as, I can't, and picking up ones that resemble, I can. What shifts in your thoughts can you make today regarding your own capacity to change, as well as your capacity to remain the same? As you embark on the next leg of your adventure, in what ways can you shift your expectations regarding change? If you avoided it, can you seed yourself deeper within the changes that are attempting to be made by you, with you, through you? What if you find that you can fully embrace change in all moments and circumstances? Well, could you just pause for a moment and enjoy the ride? Let's not be so quick to necessarily change until we've experienced as much as we safely can within the confinements of that experience before we go running off to do the next thing. I'm going to just leave it at that. I thank you for spending this time with me today. It humbles me greatly. And until next time, happy exploring.